Hey, hello, this is Chris. I just wanted to quickly introduce this episode. This is episode 14 of another podcast I do called Utah in the Weeds. I do this podcast with Tim Pickett. This was a fascinating conversation that we did with Mindy Madeo. She is a Utah medical cannabis pharmacist. She's actually going to be working out of the cannabis dispensary in Bountiful. I thought this was such a great conversation that I wanted to push it out to all the I Am Salt Lake podcast listeners so you could check it out and so you could subscribe to my other podcast if you haven't done so yet. You can find the podcast by searching for Utah in the Weeds in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also find it at utah.intheweeds.com. Like I said, this is Mindy Madeo. She was awesome. Such a great conversation. Hopefully you enjoy it, and thanks for checking it out. Anyways, episode 14 of Utah in the Weeds. By now, everybody should be subscribed to the podcast. If you're not, then you're missing out because we've been here every week, Tim. We followed.
We really are we're getting more consistent, and it's becoming a thing. Like I'm starting to take this thing seriously, honestly, like we've talked about before. I mean, we're in it.
You know, half the battle right now is to find people to bring on the show and find, because we want to talk to awesome people, and it's just hard to get super connected to the people in the industry, at least for me right now.
Well, I think certainly is for me too. And,
so maybe they can reach out if they want to come on the show.
I wish
we say
people
that all
would.
The time.
We say that all the time, but the more people listen, the more people know of other people. Reach out or reach out to somebody you know who would want to come on the podcast or you think would be good. That's fine too. Our guest today is Mindy Madeo. She is the pharmacist for Wholesome. Is it just Wholesome Incorporated? It's like a huge vertically integrated grow dispensary operation.
Yeah, officially our name is Wholesome Co. And
Wholesome Co.
Yeah, we haven't quite decided on the name of the pharmacy. I think it may be Wholesome Co Cannabis or Wholesome Co Therapy. And our grow operation is going to go under the name Wholesome Co Ag.
So Mindy, you're a pharmacist, a licensed pharmacist in Utah. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a licensed pharmacist in Utah. I have a pharmacist license as well as a controlled substance license. I did go to school in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. Pharmacy school takes usually 6 to 8 years, so it's a lot of schooling. And after my education, I did a lot of retail pharmacy. So I would be the pharmacist that would work in the places like Walgreens or CVS or Target. And I lived in Utah for a little bit after I graduated college. And then I did travel and I lived in Missouri for a few years. And then I lived in Denver, Colorado for about 5 years. And then came back to Utah. So I've traveled around a bit. I've worked at a variety of different pharmacies, but most of them have been retail locations. So this is the pharmacy when you go and get a prescription from your doctor, bring it, and then you talk to me and I'd fill it for you. So
my question, when you went to school to become a pharmacist,
yeah,
you didn't know, I mean, your goal wasn't to work with cannabis. You just thought you were going to be a regular pharmacist, right?
No, not at all. And if you were to tell me even 2 years ago that I was working with cannabis, I would have thought you were nuts. Like, I had no idea that a pharmacist would be involved in this industry. And kind of like, I'll let you know, when I was a retail pharmacist, I was kind of disillusioned with pharmacy practice in general. I felt that a lot of patients were over-prescribed medications. I didn't really love the state of our healthcare system. I felt like it was all about money. I felt like we were only treating one thing. We were looking at a disease state and just giving a medication. We weren't looking at the whole patient. So to be honest with you, I did work in retail pharmacy for a number of years, but for the last 3 or 4 years, I actually kind of quit working. I would just work the bare minimum that I needed to survive, but I was I didn't like retail pharmacy. I felt like it was a factory. I felt like people would come in, get their prescriptions, and there was a lot of problems with it. There was a lot of people on really high opioid prescriptions. Right in the middle of my career was the height of the opioid epidemic. So I really saw the whole progression of that. And it was disheartening to see all these patients come in and be on massive doses of pain medications and watch their quality of life go down as they continued to take more and more and more and more. So to be honest with you, I thought I was going to be retired about 3 years ago. And then so about the year 2018 was when Proposition 2 passed, right?
Here in Utah.
Yeah, here in Utah. And I was definitely a supporter. I wasn't like super active in the campaigning, but I agreed with it. And as soon as I heard that a pharmacist would be required to work in the pharmacies, something clicked in my head. And I kind of knew that was my thing. That was my purpose. And I got really, really excited about it. Part of the reason I got excited about it is when I worked as a pharmacist, I was really interested in plant medicine and herbal medication. Like I said, I thought people were so over medicated with pharmaceuticals. And I think a lot of these things can be treated with more natural things and don't even necessarily need to be treated at all. So like when a patient would come into my when I worked as a retail pharmacist and a patient would come into my pharmacy and maybe like they wanted a recommendation on sleep, for example, I would first list all these things that I wanted them to try that were non-prescription. I would recommend that they work on their sleep routines. I would recommend they cut down on caffeine, cut down on alcohol. And then as soon as they've done that, my next step would be, well, let's try some valerian root, or let's try melatonin. And then as soon as that didn't work, I'd maybe suggest, why don't you maybe go to your doctor and ask for like a medication? But then I'd always say, but let's not be on it long term. Let's just use it occasionally. Let's not. So I was pretty much a pharmacist that did not like medications.
Oh, wow. How did you get hooked up with Wholesome?
So as soon as 2018 came and that Proposition 2 passed, and I saw that pharmacists were going to be involved, I just did everything I could. I bought so many books. I listened to so many podcasts. I kind of searched for some education materials. I changed my LinkedIn profile to say that I wanted to be a cannabis pharmacist, which is kind of a scary move because, in pharmacy, we didn't really know that if it was going to be allowed. Like it's really scary to jump into this industry. And I do know a lot of pharmacists that are kind of like on the down low cannabis pharmacists, because it's hard to work in both the cannabis industry and the real legit pharmacy industry. In fact, I even contacted the Board of Pharmacy and Doppel, Department of Professional Licensing. And I asked them, I said, I just saw that Proposition 2 passed and pharmacists are required. Is there some sort of contact you can give me? And they immediately were just like, we want nothing to do with this. We don't approve it. We're not going to be involved in any way. So it was a little bit scary. And really, I was in a unique position because I didn't really have to work full time. So I knew that I could kind of jump in, be real vocal, be real active. And how I got involved with Wholesome is they found me on LinkedIn, to be honest with you. And we just made connections. And there's all these really serendipitous connections throughout this whole process of I'd talk to somebody and they were friends with somebody else. And I connected with them pretty early on in the process. And I wasn't sure. And this was even before they got any of their licenses, before they got their cultivation or their pharmacy license. And I just kind of stuck it out, and luckily they did get a pharmacy license. And the reason I like them is I felt like we really had similar ideals when we would talk about the reasons that we wanted to do this. So
that's cool. Is there like a pharmacist, like a group of you? Do you know the other pharmacists in the
Yeah.
like that work at Dragonfly or Perfect Earth? You guys kind of.
I do. So right now there's really only 3 pharmacies that are open, and I really, like, in my quest to learn everything I could, I contacted all of them, and we became friends, and I'm forming a Utah Cannabis Pharmacist Association. And this group is kind of under the umbrella of the Utah Cannabis Association, which is a group of QMPs, dispensaries, CBD manufacturers. It's a great group of people. Really, everyone I've met in this industry has been so great. It's been really exciting.
It seems like the pharmacists would be the level where everybody would team up, right? That information sharing would happen at that level, because it doesn't seem like there would be a lot of competition amongst the pharmacists, right? Everybody would be willing to share the information that they're giving to patients, because
for sure,
it's not right. And so have you found that amongst the pharmacists that exist now?
Yeah, very early on, when I became friendly with them, we had a lot of questions back and forth. We had this great email chain, and I remember there being a really heated discussion about suppositories, for example, and the absorption rates and the THC, and why isn't it crossing into the blood-brain barrier. So we are able to chime in and ask all these pharmacists a lot of questions. And they've even allowed me to come visit their farm. We've all visited each other's pharmacies. We've sat in on consultations. And really, in this industry, there's only 14 pharmacies. So I don't view any of them as competition. Another reason that I like to team up with them is we are really creating our roles. There's not a lot of other examples of how a pharmacist is going to fit into this function, or into this business. So we are trying to team up and just decide how and if their pharmacist does a better job, then it's going to be better for my business, better for everybody.
Is there other states that use pharmacists at all, or is Utah kind of unique?
Yeah, there actually are. If I remember right, I think New York and Connecticut use a lot of pharmacists in their medical cannabis programs. But also, there's not only that, there are some actual chains, like big, huge chain of dispensaries that are in many, many different states. And the one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is called Columbia Care. Are you familiar with them?
No.
Have you heard of them? They actually got a license in Springville in Utah. So they are coming into the Utah market. And they have probably 30 plus dispensaries. And there's some in Florida, Arizona, New York, Delaware. They're all over. And they put pharmacists in every single dispensary. And most of these states don't require it. So they're very medically focused, and their product, you should check out their website. Their product selection is really great. And they almost look like a traditional pharmacy. So a very good company.
What's the benefit of putting a pharmacist in a dispensary like that? Like Utah set up a model like that, but these other states that don't have that, why would they do that?
Oh, well, there's definitely a need for a pharmacist. I mean, a pharmacist has so much schooling. They have a lot of background in pharmacokinetics and all the different disease state managements. Like there is definitely a use for a pharmacist.
Yeah, but most pharmacists aren't educated with cannabis, though. That's what I've run into.
Yeah, well, but if you think about it, you need to know more than cannabis, and cannabis you can get educated on fairly quickly. I mean, most doctors aren't educated in cannabis either, but we can become familiar with it. You think about the number of medications that we are familiar with, and something that pharmacists do that I think is going to be very helpful in the dispensaries is we're taught. So for every medication that exists, we are taught the disease that. So we learn about the disease that it treats, right? We learn about the mechanism of the disease. We learn about how it's diagnosed. We learn about the medications that are used for it. And so we spend years and years and years learning a little bit about every disease state. So we've got this large, broad knowledge base. And so when somebody comes into the pharmacy, we're almost like triaging them. It's really a big, huge part of our job. So we're able to know when to refer them to a doctor. We're able to know when to refer them to an emergency room. We can know when to let them pick something over the counter and treat themselves. So we really do have a lot of knowledge. And with cannabis, I'm sure you guys know with cannabis, the dosing is tricky. So our background in pharmacokinetics, where we probably spend the most time of any healthcare professional knowing about absorption rates and metabolism, different dosage forms and how they absorb in the body and how quickly they work and how they cross the blood-brain barrier. So we've probably got the best background, I would imagine. And I think Columbia Care realized that, and they're using that.
Have you ever used cannabis? I know that sounds like a silly question, but believe it or not, we had Rich Oborn on here, and he's never even used cannabis before.
Oh,
we
really?
just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. How do you work with it and never use it?
Yeah, I mean, I have for sure.
Okay, But, I know that sounds silly, and I wasn't trying to interrogate you or something. But.
No, it's a good question, and but I will tell you, as a pharmacist by nature, at least me myself are rule followers. So
sure. I
like to say that a lot of pharmacists are a little OCD, and that's also why we're good at our job, because we follow the rules. So I have used it, but I don't try to make it a habit just because I'm worried about the legal ramifications. Sure. And that's something that's a little tricky with the pharmacist too. Since I have a controlled substance license, if I get caught breaking the controlled substance law, I'm actually in much more trouble than most people. Same thing with DUIs. If I get a DUI, they don't just take away my license or my driver's license. They would take away my pharmacist license. I'd go on probation. They would print my letter in a newsletter and send it to all the other pharmacists I know. So it's a little bit more on my shoulders when it comes to substances.
Do you think that as a pharmacist or somebody who's going to be recommending dosage and delivery to the patients, do you think that gives you an advantage, like your personal experience with cannabis? And the reason I ask is because, I have an opinion about this, but, but it's not like you're trying your thyroid medication when you're recommending, like when you're discussing that with a patient or as a pharmacist, right? It's not like you've tried a bunch of Percocets and
I haven't tried it hardly. I hate medication. I haven't tried hardly anything. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that's, amlodipine or some blood pressure medication. It's not like you've tried that. So you're giving advice to patients who haven't, and you haven't had personal experience with the medication, but I think cannabis is different. And so do you think there's an advantage to having some personal experience with cannabis for patients? Yeah, as a pharmacist.
I do not believe you need to have personal experience. I think you learn enough as a pharmacist about the things that you need to know that you don't have to actually consume it yourself. But I think it's helpful. I think I'm going to say that the part that I think it's helpful with is the strains and choosing the different, it's probably helpful to try the different types of strains just to understand for yourself. But I think you could be an excellent, excellent cannabis pharmacist and not touch it, which is hard to understand. But yeah, I think that can be accomplished for sure.
I just don't know how you could be around it all day and not want to touch it. That's what,
yeah.
And the more
I'm being silly.
We walked through the Wholesome location in Bountiful yesterday, you and I, and that is going to, it's going to be a great space. And
well, what does it look like? Talk about it. What is it?
When you walk in, so it's going to be next to, can we talk about this, Mindy? Can we talk about where it's going to be? I would think that this is pretty much public knowledge.
I looked on the website. It says right here where their address is, 580 West.
I'm probably not the best person to answer these questions, specifically about the Wholesome business. But yeah, we can talk about what the pharmacy is going to look like, I would say, and how I imagine the pharmacy.
Yeah, you walk in, it's right next to Costco in Bountiful. I mean, it's going to be right downtown, West Bountiful. And it's an excellent location, very easy to get to off both freeways, north and south. You walk in, big curved wall. It's not finished yet. They're still building it out, but there's a big curved wall, a bigger lobby area and waiting area than, for instance, at Dragonfly in comparison. And then you walk to the right, correct, Mindy? And there'll be the consultation rooms.
Yeah, so that will be where the pharmacist will be. So as soon as you're done in the check-in and the front area, then you'll go talk to me, and that's where I'll do my consultation.
Right. And then the retail area is a little smaller than, for instance, Dragonfly, but they were restricted because of the size of their building, but in kind of their size. But the retail area seems a little smaller, but still the counter area will be just as big as, for instance, in Dragonfly. And it's very, I think it's pretty inviting. Like the design itself is pretty inviting. Tell us how we kind of got to go back to this consultation area, because I know patients really are interested in how this works. Like they come see somebody like me, they get their card, and then, okay, now what? What do I expect when I'm a patient and I go down to the pharmacy with the pharmacist?
So after they've got their card, they will come to our pharmacy, and they can either check in ahead of time online, or they can just come to the pharmacy. And their first visit, they'll have a consultation with me, the pharmacist. So like you said, they'll go through that lobby, and then they'll be buzzed to the back and meet me in my office. And then do you want me to tell you some of the questions I'm going to ask in the consultation, or should we?
I'm interested
because as a
QMP, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, what the heck questions? I didn't know you asked any questions.
So, I have in fact, I have it written down. I've got a list of things that I would like to talk about. And it's not just for my own benefit that I have it written down, but the state and some of the Cannabis Act rules requires that we talk about certain things in our consultation. So I make sure that I refer to those. But yeah, when someone comes in to my room, I'd probably verify their name first, ask them who their QMP is. And then I would ask them what their QMP told them, what they recommended. I kind of get a gist for how much education they were given by their provider. And then I would ask about their qualifying condition, and say, for example, their qualifying condition is pain. And I use that example because that's the majority of the cannabis qualifying conditions. I would then ask more specific details. I would ask about what time of day their pain is worse. I'd ask about how severe it is. I'd ask what things make it better, what things make it worse. And I just general, tell me about your condition. And then I would also ask, so the next thing I'd ask is maybe what medications they're taking. And it's important to get a list of medications because, of course, I'm sure there are some drug interactions that we need to watch out for. Not very many, but there's definitely some that could be unfortunate. Some of them, there's some medications that will make the THC not eliminate from your body as quickly. So your THC would actually work more than you expected. And it's not just a little bit.
Yeah, what medication is that one? Everybody wants to know what that one is. How can I make this last longer?
Maybe they could figure something out. So THC, if I'm remembering right, I think THC is metabolized through the CYP2C9 and the 3A4.
34. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's the big one, the 3A4. But a lot of, so they're not real common medications, but a lot of the antifungals like fluconazole, metronidazole, itraconazole, amiodarone, cyclosporin. So there's definitely a list of medications.
None of these are going to be common medications that people think.
Well, I take 3 of those. But
free to talk with a pharmacist. I feel like, and I remember this in the pharmacy, but I feel like sometimes when you're at a doctor's office, you feel like the doctor's going to chart something, or they're not going to give you your medication, or whatever you say is going to really affect how they treat you. So I feel like they're a little bit more open, and it's just a little bit more, you're talking to a friend. I feel like sometimes you get more of that information. Another thing that I think Utah requires is we need to talk about kind of the things that aren't allowed. So, of course, you guys know too in Utah that you're not allowed to have a joint, certain paraphernalia like bombs
no open
and pipes.
flames.
Yeah, no open flames. Yeah. So I like to talk to the patient about, well, let's imagine a scenario where you have this in your car. Do you know what things that you could have in your car that if a policeman were to pull you over that you'd be in trouble for? So I think that's an important discussion.
What is it? I mean, I'm curious what that is.
Yeah. So if you don't have
boatload of weed, I'll tell you that.
if you don't have your card with you, you'll be in trouble. You really should have. Yeah, you should always have that card with you at all times, because if you have that, you've got to prove that it's yours, and you also need, right now you do need a label. So you should probably also have that original container that has the label with your name, your QMP. You should really keep all that information with you. And you should never have
wait. Let me stop right there.
Anything in your car that is not allowed. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna back up there. Chris and I are both like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put this out of the flour. I'm gonna take the flour and I'm gonna put it in a different container. Yeah. Because it keeps it a little better, because you're going to sell it to me in probably a bag. Maybe you're going to sell it to me in a jar, but I'm going to keep it in something different. Can I keep it in a locked? And this comes up in my conversations with patients too, but can I keep it in a little locked container? I
would recommend you always keep that label, because that's going to help you in any situation with a police officer. Because how do we know that flour wasn't from somebody else? You need to, and really, I think you'd probably be okay, but they do recommend that you keep that label with you at all times. If it was me, and especially if I wasn't taking my car.
What about all the patients that are going out of state though right now? I mean, the doctors are telling them that they can go out of state.
Yeah, we're in a little bit of a loophole period with you're right. You're right, but still.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious. Yeah. Maybe we got to bring JD on here. We got to bring JD.
Yep, we got the lawyer guy. We got to bring on there. But also I would say, Mindy, I would tweak that a little bit. In my opinion, I would say that, patients, once they're here, they're allowed to have it. They're allowed to have up to 4 ounces. I think you're right. I would agree with you that if you bought it in Utah, you should, it'd be nice to keep that label, because that's just an additional layer of proof that you're legal, that you bought it in a legal way. Yeah. I think that patients, when you say that they have to have their cards with them, that's almost an impossibility in Utah, because Utah issues a PDF email, not a printed card. Nobody prints the card. So hopefully they just have access to that. Yes.
If they can access it on their phone.
What you're saying is, be able to access the proof that you're legal here.
And the more proof, the better, honestly.
Right. Like with the labels and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely always recommend my patients are locking their product up. If they have flour, they're putting it in a locked container. Like in my clinic, we have these little skunk bags that have a luggage lock on them. And so we
sell those at your clinic?
Yeah, we sell these little skunk bags, and they're different sizes, but they have a little luggage lock with a combination. And it's a perfect way to keep, like a little grinder and a dry herb vaporizer, right? Things like this that are, there's a lot of people that I run into that are, they're smoking joints, they're smoking, they're using flames. And so we're teaching them about the dry herb vaporizers in the clinic. And then a lot of times they just ask us, well, where am I going to get this? Right? Like, where do I buy one? And so we just have them there. We offer them a little discount because they can be expensive, but okay. So they go through the consultation with you, but then you help them decide on delivery methods, and dosing. And, a lot of times you're going to get QMPs who don't do the dosing and delivery. So,
Yeah.
and you're really interested in this dosing and delivery, like this concept, right?
Yes.
For patients.
Yeah. So I would go through some of these questions, and then it would lead to a dosing where we would talk about dosing. And I hate to say, I want to change some verbiage here. I don't like to say that the pharmacist is dosing a patient. I don't like to say that the doctor is dosing a patient. I like to say that the patient is dosing themselves. And that is because a dose is we're really dosing to effect. So as QMPs and PMPs, we're not telling this patient, you start at 10 milligrams and go up to 20 milligrams after 3 days. You can't do that. You need to start at a low dose, go to effect, and the patient's the one who's kind of driving the car when it comes to the dosing. So I think as professionals, we are there to give them the tools to learn to dose themselves. And it's kind of a new way to do medicine, because we're allowing people to treat themselves pretty much. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. Like, we have this conversation all the time, every single day. Like, no, I'm not going to tell you to take 5 milligrams 3 times a day or whatever, 3 times a day. You're going to be in control, right? Yeah. The patient gets control. And then, so, I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that. And, we do a lot of dosing in my clinic, and all my providers are kind of educated about dosing. And so when they come see you, I think they'll get education from us, and then they'll get education from you, and even further, like, I think that'll be very helpful. A lot of QMPs are going to send people to you without anything, right? They're just going to write the card and here you go. And that's a big responsibility for you guys, figuring out what to have people take.
We are definitely the right people to do. I feel like I actually feel very confident that we can handle that. And like I said, if they get education from the QMPs and the pharmacists, the more education, the better. And they'll get education from the agents. Really, I mean, the more we can help these people select the right product and dose the right way, the better.
So what more education? You said that you've read a bunch of stuff. You've read books, you've listened to podcasts, you've done self-education. Are you doing any formal education, or are you working on anything formally? So when I decided I was going to go gung-ho into this industry, I really was searching for a good online education. I was looking at certifications, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of bad education out there. There's a lot of, I mean, did you notice that? Did you try to look for some seminar? I felt like there wasn't a lot of good quality medical education. So I had a hard time finding one, but there was a program that I had heard about a 1.5 years ago, and it's a brand new graduate program. It's a master's degree out of the University of Maryland in Baltimore, which is a pretty prestigious pharmacy school. I think it's number 9th in the nation or something like that. So they've got a master's degree in cannabis science and therapeutics. And I had just randomly heard about it on NPR one day. And I immediately, like, the program just barely opened, and I immediately did all the work to apply for it. And they had such an influx of applications that they told me the first year, they're like, we couldn't even look at yours, so we're going to defer you to next year. We promise you we'll look at your application. And I did get in the second year. So I am currently a student there. And I don't know anyone else from Utah, but I do think there's another QMP that's going to be attending this school as well. So I'm really excited. It's a lot of the coursework is pretty advanced stuff and things I really want to learn. So then in the next 2 years, I'm doing this graduate program. It's mostly online, so I can do it and still live in Utah. And I just fly to Washington, D.C. once a semester and go to like some symposium or something like that. Man, that sounds like a lot of fun and a lot of work.
Are you just learning
I'm
crazy
excited.
stuff about cannabis? Like what's you stuff just must be blowing your mind. You're like, wow, you're learning stuff that's just like, wow, I didn't know that.
And the funny thing is, when I was in pharmacy school, nobody talked about the endocannabinoid system. And I think the medical schools were the same way. We didn't have a medication
we learned
to treat it.
Nothing.
Yeah. So it's pretty exciting. And I'm a little bit, sometimes I get frustrated because I really geek out about the research and the studies. And my favorite thing is to find really good randomized controlled trials and peer reviewed journals. And there's just not a ton of them. There are more and more. I have been looking at research for a couple of years now, and I see more and more, especially out of Canada. So I really want there to be a lot more research in this area. And I think it's just going to get better and better. I'm not one of those people that think cannabis is going to cure everything, but I think it's such a safe medication. And I think it's going to enhance the quality of life with so many people. And I think back to my days in retail pharmacy when I had all those opioid patients, and we did have a specific customer or a specific patient that I think about that was on just 3 or 4 different really high potency opioids. And he would just come in all the time. And then we just didn't see him for a while, and we just didn't really think anything of it. And he'd come in and he looked so much better. He lost weight. He was doing great. And he stopped filling all his medications. And he did tell us after the fact that he had gone across the state to Colorado, across state lines, was buying pot brownies. And he was basically like stopping his opioids. And I think back to him all the time. I think, how cool would it be if we can go into rehab centers and give everyone pot brownies and get them all off these opioids. And honestly, the research to support this is great. So if that's all we accomplish with this program, then it's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You're talking, we probably interviewed that guy.
Probably.
when we interviewed David Sutherland or one of the other patients.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I think you make a really great, you really make a really good case about having a pharmacist in the dispensaries or in the pharmacies, the cannabis pharmacies. And I think that, like you say, I mean, treating this like a medication and making sure that you're there helping people dose and figure out what type of delivery system that works best for them. I just read an article today that talks about the quality of the plant is much more important than the level of THC that's in the plant. For example,
I read that article.
Did you? Yeah. Right. So, and there really needs to be people like you that patients trust, so that you can see a patient walk in and say, no, you don't want to be vaping this 26% THC. You want to be vaping this 16% because it's better quality for what you need. Yeah. Right. Based on what we're hearing from the patients, and everybody's going to be different. But I think pharmacists are unique. I mean, because you're not a bud tender. What do you say to that term? Do people call you? Do your friends call you the pharmacist bud tender? Is that, that's no good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a cannabis pharmacist. I like to be official. I like to use official terms. So yeah. I'd say
it's so cool.
I think it's cool.
So cool.
It's cool what you're doing. I'm happy about that master's program that you're doing. I think that we need more of that type of education in the medical community, and there won't be enough of that. I'll be surprised if a lot of the education content that you learn won't change over the course of your program, as we learn more about the minor cannabinoids and things like that.
It's going to be a lifetime learning, and I'm really excited to learn everything from this program, teach it to my staff. But I really anticipate too, which I'm excited about, as I'm a pharmacist, I'd love to get students from the colleges, from the University of Utah and Roseman University. And hopefully they'll start to teach cannabis medicine in the pharmacy schools, and it will be a discipline, and I'll be able to have students come shadow me and work with me. And this might just be an area of pharmacy that we'll see in the future. And I can't imagine why it wouldn't. Even if Utah's program goes away and we don't require pharmacists, there's going to be those places like Columbia Care that see the value in pharmacists, and pharmacists are definitely going to be involved.
I think that you have a place to work forever, whether or not it's in the retail cannabis side, like in the cannabis pharmacies, or in the development of product side, where they're working in the lab and trying to develop products that are better for certain conditions as the research gets more developed. Yeah.
My other pharmacist that I work with is has a big background in compounding. So she's going to be working in the lab. She's going to be she knows so much more about that. And so pharmacists, not only they have such a good knowledge of compound. Like, we've been making stuff for a long time in all the other pharmacies. So we can definitely help in the processing.
Well, I can't wait till there's a day when I can take a patient and say, hey, you have knee pain. We need to make this, or you have lower back pain. We need the compounding pharmacy to make a minor cannabinoid. We need this many percent of CBN and this much percent of THC.
Oh, that will happen.
And you can kind of dial that in to a compound tincture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait for that day.
They do that already with other medications. I could see where you write out a little formula of what percentage of cannabinoids you want. And you could even add, I want these terpenes to be in there. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Oh, think of all the things we could treat: the GI issues, the low back pain, the migraine headaches. And I think that's coming. I think that's 7 or 8 years away, 7 to 10 years away, but it'll come.
I think this whole industry,
I don't think we're that far.
And this whole industry is a little bit frustrated. I hear a lot of complaints and frustration with how Utah is handling everything. But I think we all need to take a step back and realize we've come a long ways. And what I see from my end is it's getting better. There's such good things coming on the horizon, and it's going to be so much better product, and there's going to be such better processes, and we're going to be so efficient. It's going to be so accessible. And there are a lot of people in this business that are in it for the right reasons. So I think it's going to do well, and I think it's going to help a lot of people, most importantly.
And it sounds like you're in it for the right reasons. So that's awesome.
I am. That's another interesting thing is, pharmacists, when they come into this business, we take a pretty big pay cut. So I can tell you that all the pharmacists I've met are in it for the right reasons. If they want to make money, then they're working at Walgreens. They're not working here.
Wow. Well,
that's where the big bucks are.
Yeah.
Walgreens is where the big bucks are. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, thanks, Mindy, for coming on. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. This has been interesting and really fun.
Did we mention when the pharmacy is opening? The pharmacy dispensary is opening there in Bountiful? Because I'm looking on the website, it says mid-July.
Yeah, we're hoping July 17th, but we'll see. And everything's going really well. And I feel like we have such a great product. And I'm really very excited for what we're going to bring to this community, and what we're going to bring to the cannabis world. It's going to be great.
We're going to look forward to that. That's going to be right in my hometown.
Any other questions for her, Tim, or should we let her go and get this episode wrapped up for the evening?
I think we wrap it up. I think this has been pretty enlightening. I think patients will have something to learn and listen to here about the process. Do
you have anything else you want to say, Mindy, while we're here? Anything you want to educate or shout out? There
is one thing. Well, I think something that I think is really important in the consultation that we didn't go over, that I think we all need to educate our patients on, is that cannabis, I think cannabis is used to treat medical conditions, but we also need to use it to enhance our health by promoting activities like that are going to make us healthy overall. Like I like to tell patients that it's wise to use cannabis to go exercise or meditate or journal or socialize with friends. So we need to realize it's not always just for a medical condition, but it's to make our whole self healthy. And I think that's an important, and sometimes we take people and we put them into two camps. We say that there's a recreational user and a medical user, but I think we need to realize that we're all medical users, and we're all using it to be a healthier person. So if you're that recreational user that's using it because it makes you able to go to a party, you're using it so you don't have to take a anxiety medication later. So I don't like how there's this distinction between people who are using it for the wrong reasons and the right reasons. I just want to say that we're all using it for a good reason.
I like that.
I like that. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. I think, wow. How can people get a hold of you, Tim? What's the best way to find out more about what you have going on?
Definitely with us, it's utahmarijuana.org, or just call me 801-851-5554. I mean, we do a lot of education, cannabis education. Of course, you can learn a lot about what we do and listen to the podcast on our website too, and read the podcast. We transcribe all the episodes there. And of course, I'm a QMP. So, that's, we have clinic space and see patients every day. It's just really exciting.
So Tim's the man. If you need your card, Tim's the man. You can go listen to my other podcast at iamsaltlake.com. This last week, we actually just had the owner of Twist on the podcast. I believe this was I don't know. It doesn't matter. Go listen to it. iamsaltlake.com. My weeks are mixed up right now. I don't know what week is which.
I Am Salt Lake is really the best podcast that is the best local podcast we have around.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've chatted with a lot of people, including Tim. He was on episode 420.
Yes,
so
that's what I do think that was the best episode you ever did.
And it really
reasons.
just
I don't
happened.
know, it just happened.
It really just happened.
I play that episode back to back in my clinic in the lobby. If you want to hear that episode, just make an appointment with me. Come to my lobby. You'll listen to it over and over and over again.
Do you really do that?
Oh, yeah, you bet. Because
Please tell me you're kidding.
Actually, I'm not really kidding, but we mix it up with different episodes. We do Utah in the Weeds. We do that episode.
No kidding.
Yeah, because I don't know. It's interesting to people listen. We try to pick episodes that explain the process a little bit. And so we play them. We have a big sign we have a big Utah in the Weeds poster.
I want to come visit your
We should
office.
make some little flyers or cards up or something like that, right? Like
I was thinking about making.
Let's get out of here. We need to let Mindy go.
Okay, fine.
All right, Mindy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we can bring you back on sometime.
Okay.
That's it. Make sure you're subscribed. You guys have a great week.
All right. Stay safe out there.